With this inquiry question, we look at the structure of an investigative report. And this is quite an important part of the scientific process because it allows scientists to publish their results and also allows other scientists in the field to look at the results, gain new ideas, and if needed, critique and sort of punch holes in any of the structure of the report. And so we start off with every report needs a title, and it's got to be very clear and to the point. Within a sort of reasonable sized sentence, you have to give the reader an idea of what the report's about. And this is particularly important with a lot of modern scientific reports and research, which are very, very specific and very, very niche. And so this example here, which is a genetics paper, and so if you look there, the investigation of polymorphisms in the 4Q 13.3-21.1 CXC chemocotin gene cluster for the association of multiple sclerosis in Australians. Air one, it's a mouthful. But for genetics researchers and people researching multiple sclerosis, that's actually quite powerful. It gives a lot of information in a very short period of time. And so that's very important as well. And it should be noted that a lot of modern science will have these almost indecipherable words to people outside of the field, which isn't actually a problem because it informs experts in that field exactly what's going on. Really important part as well is your abstract. And your abstract is just in a paragraph or two outlining everything in the report. So, you've got a summary of the objectives, results, conclusions. In most cases, you'll have a bit of the methodology there, just very brief and to the point. And many scientific reports are very long, with a lot of information in there. And so researchers in the field can actually have a look at the abstract and quickly work out whether the report is going to be relevant to them. And it's particularly important as well. Much of this research is behind paywalls, which is a problem with modern science, where if you want to read a research paper, you have to go through and you have to pay money to read it. And so if you can read the abstract and see that it's relevant, then you're obviously going to save yourself a bit of money if it's not. Now, your introduction is talking about the theory. In some cases this might be similar to what a lot of students have done in the past, doing things like background research or literature reviews, which is just discussing the theory. And it may have some of the theory leading up to the investigation and give the reader an idea of the thinking process that the researchers had in developing their research. And it should also talk about the aims, what the investigators were trying to find when they were doing this. The next step is the materials and the methods. And so here what you're doing is clearly articulating how the investigation was done. This allows anyone who might want to try and replicate your results, they should be able to easily do that. And it changes depending on the type of research. The style of writing is generally prose, so it's written in a paragraph form, and that's because it's trying to really summarize very concisely what was done. It's done in the past tense, so it's this was done, not as we are going to do this. So in your junior science textbooks, generally investigations are written as procedures telling you what to do. In a scientific report, you're not really doing that. You're reporting on what you've done. So it is that past tense. It's also passive voice and third person. So the idea here is taking the scientist, taking the person out of it and just clearly explaining what was done. And this can take lots of forms. This one here is some medical research which was done during the COVID or the early days of the COVID-19 breakout. And so what we've got here is a thing where in a hospital they did some treatments on some people and were trying to find some sort of treatment for COVID-19. And so it explains what they've done and how they did it and their methodology. And of course, once you've done that as well, you need to get your results and your discussion. So your results generally will be in a couple of forms. First one usually is data tables. So the data is clearly shown. In some cases, if you are doing an investigation such as in physics or chemistry, you're probably going to clearly show your dependent and independent variables. But what you're also going to do is show some kind of data manipulation. And by that, I mean not manipulating the data to make it false, you're showing it in a different form. And most of the time, that's going to be the form of graphs. So the example you can see there is categorical data, so it's in a histogram style thing. But you might have, if you're looking at a cause and effect relationship, and you've got non-categorical data, you might have a line or a scatter graph there as well. And this then leads on to trying to identify trends. And so the researchers can then make comments and say, well, this showed a trend, this one didn't. Were there any unexpected results? Are the results relevant? So, in a lot of cases there, your discussion will be talking about validity, reliability, and accuracy. And, potentially talking about whether there's improvements that can be made on doing the research again. And of course, most importantly as well, is discussing with evidence whether your hypothesis was confirmed. Because that's a really important process there, just to make sure that, you are researching what you set out to. Then you will have references. So this may be stuff that you did in your background research, whatever protocol is required, whether it's Harvard or any other relevant referencing tool. It usually depends on who you're working for, whether what they want from that. And of course, just the last little bit there, similar idea to what we said before, the idea of an investigation and its written report. So the investigation is your test. It's what you're trying to do. The structures and the functions, similar to what we said before in 7 to 10, that you probably were operating from investigation procedures, which tell you what to do. Your written report is telling people what you did. And so they're very similar to each other. They're just slightly different in terms of tense and things like that. So, your investigation just tells you what you've done, whereas your report places it in the wider scheme of things. So your investigation is simply, this is done, this is done, this is done. Your report is a very stylized way of explaining why you did this, what you found out, and how it can be relevant to other areas.